It has been a busy few weeks on and off the blue carpet, with high drama at the Commonwealth Games as Alex Yee and Flora Duffy won the individual golds and England the mixed relay, a brilliant WTPS Swansea that saw the top tier of paratriathlon racing hit Wales for the UK's first ever standalone Paris Series action, and most recently, attention's turned to Chamarin and the aquathlon and long distance triathlon world champs, sandwiching the PTO Collins Cup in Slovakia. The first and last of those races saw a certain Hayden Wilde in the spotlight, and it is to New Zealand that we turn for this episode of the World Triathlon Podcast to discuss all that and more with the man who has helped to steer a raw multisport talent that he spotted back in 2016 into a World Championship contender and Olympic medalist. Hope you enjoy it. New Zealand's Craig Kirkwood was an international runner and Ironman triathlete himself before taking up the mantle of elite coach, honing the talents of Hayden Wilde and runner Sam Tanner to name but two. Wilde's ascension has been as eye-catching as it has been exhilarating for the sport, and you suspect the best is still to come from him. So Craig, welcome to the podcast. How are you and where are you?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. Yep, I'm back in freezing cold of New Zealand winter at the moment, so spent the last kind of 8 weeks or so in Europe in the summer, and now I'm home in the cold. Wishing I was back in Europe.
The roaming continues then. How much is there such a thing as an average year, and how much do you spend in Europe or indeed chasing your athletes around the circuit, and then how much do you get to be back home?
Yeah, like the times away are pretty limited. I try not to get away too much, but pre-games it was good to get away and just have a stint with Hayden prior to the championships, and it was definitely worthwhile. So, but yeah, I mean, I try not to get away for too much of the year.
I said in the intro that we suspect the best is still to come from Hayden. Is it?
Oh, I hope so. He's been progressing every year that we've been working together. So from 2016 through to now, and I don't see any reason why that ascent should slow down.
How is the stable at the moment for you? How many athletes are you working with? And I mean, presumably that's a huge part of the reason why you need to spend time back home as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I have a group of adult athletes, we'll call them, a mix of runners and triathletes, and they probably number about 25 or so of them, and then I've got a junior group of about 15 or so who just kind of high school age kids who are either runners or triathletes and kind of working their way towards their goals. So it keeps me busy, and it's part of the reason I like to be home a lot of the time, but also got a family here and other obligations. So kind of be here for them as well.
Yeah. So CK coaching, what kind of variety of or range of talent and sort of level are you working with there?
Oh, look, to be honest, like when I first started coaching, it was all just about helping anyone who had a bit of a goal and a desire and a bit of passion and wanted to try and better themselves. And I've tried to maintain that level as well as much as I can. So I've got some guys who he ran not quite a PB, but close to his marathon PB last week, and it was 3 hours and 52 minutes. So and then for someone like him right through to Hayden or Sam Tanner, who's one of the best in the world. So it's a huge range, but I find both ends of the spectrum equally as rewarding. I just love seeing, people just achieve their goals and just, being stoked with how everything's going. Yeah, that's what kind of drives me.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, the world of an Olympic medalist and just sub 4 hour marathon. I mean, that's got to test your skills as well, right? I mean, how do you keep on top of, and at the same time, for those people you're coaching at that other level, to know you've got that in the locker and being able to convert that sort of talent is got to be very exciting for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome working with the whole spectrum, and I like I said, I really enjoy just helping them get to where they want to go, and obviously their trainings are hugely different. But when everyone's here in Tauranga, mainly during the summer here, we have those same two athletes on a Saturday morning doing a workout, maybe not together, but on the same bit of road, or and so we try and keep it pretty normal for everyone, and that they're just doing their workout at their own level, and just there's groups of people who go off and do the session, and not everyone can run as fast as Hayden or Sam does. So
what to take it back to you coming out of being an athlete yourself and into coaching, what was that a path that fairly quickly became an obvious one that you wanted to go down, as the athletics career was kind of dropping back, or were there specific circumstances that made it the logical progression, really?
Yeah, it was probably just a natural progression as you get older and slower, and injuries start to creep in. You start to find other avenues, and by that stage I'd already started helping some people casually, and then before I started forming my own business and operating as a full-time coach, and then once as you get more and more athletes, more and more attention has to be given to them, so your own kind of performances kind of peter out, and now I just find pleasure in going out for a run or a ride or a swim every day, and just being fit but not really training for anything, or trying to win any races. I don't really have any desire to line up on a start line anymore, so so that kind of that part of my life is pretty much gone. Now I'm just helping those who still really want to do that, do it to their best ability. I've got a long kind of history in the sport, and I've got a degree in sports science, and I worked as a personal trainer in a gym, and then I worked in the athletics industry as in an agent capacity, and then in an admin capacity, and and then it just kind of flowed onto coaching. So it's been a kind of a lifetime of it.
And through your career, were there coaches that you had that you've tried to either emulate or things that you've been able to bolt on to how you coach that were the result of people that you've worked with in the past as well?
Yeah, I think that's just a natural thing, isn't it? You work with a coach, and then things that you really admire out of them, and things that they do, and the way they interact with you, or the way the prescription that they give you, you kind of take that on board as something that was really successful, and you try and use that where you can. Doesn't always work for everyone, but you've got to be able to read the person and know what's actually going to work for them. And so to have kind of a long history in the sport, and then to go into coaching, you kind of develop those experiences, and you start to learn what's going to work and what's not going to work for people, or at least to recognize what's going to happen, or that it's happening, I guess, as well. If you're screwing something up, then you really want to be able to recognize that pretty quickly.
You've worked in sport for all your life then, essentially. How is the life of the sports agent?
Yeah, well, I wasn't the agent necessarily. I worked in the agency,
Right.
But it was I worked for Kim McDonald, who was out of London. Those who are my era will know him very well. He worked with a lot of the top Kenyan athletes of the time. We had a whole stable of world record holders and Olympic champions, and so it was an amazing kind of 4 years of my life where I got to work in a really, really high performance environment, and see how those guys operated, and just learnt heaps from them. So yeah, probably the most famous is Daniel Komen, the 3,000 meter world record holder. Still to this day, they tried to break it last weekend in Monaco, but like every other attempt since he broke it has failed. And so it was an amazing time in my life, and being involved in that.
And being on the front line of sport in a country like New Zealand, where it's like so highly regarded part of the national psyche and so on, and then to kind of come across someone like Hayden Wilde and get to appreciate what he is going to be able to contribute in what has been, and it inevitably is, like the cyclical nature of a sport like triathlon in New Zealand, right? The highs and lows, and which, whether you're Australia or the States or Great Britain, every nation goes through that, don't they? But yeah, so you're 2016. Can you just how you met with Hayden? What were the circumstances there? And yeah, how did you meet? Was that is it Tauranga? Did you say, is that where you're based?
Tara. So
Tauranga.
yeah, so he'd done I think the cross tri worlds and exterior worlds that year, and he'd won the junior grade, and then he'd watched Rio and decided he wanted to go to the Olympics. So that was kind of his impetus of going, all right, I'm going to have a crack at this and see if I can get there. And yeah, we kind of contacted later in that year and started working together in maybe like November of 2016 or something like that. And yeah, I mean, he's obviously extremely talented athlete, but he wasn't exactly flying back in those days. I mean, I think the first race we sent him to was a 5K on the track, and he ran well north of 16 minutes, which is, you know, a long way from where he is at the moment. So it's been a long progression to where he's got to, but I still think there's plenty more to go. Yeah, I think the next probably 3 or 4 years we'll definitely see the best of him.
So to go from a 5K north of 16 minutes to like you said, what he is doing now, you obviously saw the potential in him then, though. Presumably you're not at that stage thinking Olympic podiums, but what was it that you kind of noticed that specifically about him that you felt you could definitely kind of work with and get your teeth into?
Yeah, well, actually, it was probably prior to that made me kind of pay real attention to him, and it was the first time we'd ever met, and he beat me in a road race, and it's a bit of a funny story, but we went to this half marathon. Well, I went to it, and there was $1,000 for first place, and I went there pretty cocky, thinking I was going to be able to pick up the $1,000. But I did know there's this young multisport guy, Hayden Wilde, who was going to attend. So, but I wasn't really too worried about him. I think he was only 18 at the time, so I was like, should be a piece of cake. And we get into this race, and he smashes me over the last couple of K. And I tried every trick in the book to get rid of him, and yeah, I just couldn't. And he beat me. And so on that day, I was like, man, this kid's tough, you know, like, and you know, then we kind of talked later on and kind of learned a bit more about how he was actually. What he was actually doing to be as fit as he was, or to be as good as he was, and you know, quickly realized that he had a lot of growth to go. And if he was, you know, that kind of gritty, determined young athlete that beat me in a half marathon, then you know, there certainly had to be a lot more in the tank than he was showing at that point in time. So, so that was probably the first indication for me that he was, you know, something special and was going to go a long way if he, you know, could get all the bits of triathlon, you know, in the right order and correct. I do remember saying to him early doors that he was going to be really limited by his swim, and because he wasn't swimming at all really at that point. He'd only just started in the pool, so it was so that, and to this day it's still his Achilles heel, as everyone knows. But I think the Commonwealth Games swim in the last couple of weeks really showed the level that he's actually at with the swimming. He just needs the right conditions to show it. So hopefully that'll be something for the future, that he can get to the front of those swim packs.
So that, having seen Rio 2016 triathlon and realised that was where he wanted to be, was that presumably like, you know, just to be part of the Olympics to start with, but also like that drive to get there and that grit? Is that, you know, where does that come from? In, you know, it's one of those things that you can't obviously teach someone, but you knew pretty early on, did you, that he had that just that spirit within him to be able to push himself to what he's able to do?
Yeah. I mean, he was clearly someone who was extremely driven and determined to get where he wanted to go. I probably sat back, you know, in the back of my mind thinking, you know, he's got a tough road to get there. His chances of making it to the Olympics are probably pretty slim at this point, you know, not having done, you know, many road triathlons at all. Getting to that level in 4 years is probably not going to happen. But I'm not going to say that to him, you know, straight away. I'm going to tell him that, let's give it a go and we'll see what happens. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of what I said to him exactly. and just encouraging that belief in himself and that desire to be as good as he can and to push the limits is something you want to inspire rather than crush with reality.
Definitely. But I mean, but he does have a very interesting demeanor for someone that can do what he does, right? It comes across incredibly laid back and a man who just loves doing what he's doing, right? But you obviously see another side of him as well.
Yeah. I mean, he does come across that way, and for the most part he is. But there are times when, like anyone, the pressure gets to him a bit, and things don't go.
I wasn't fishing for like. No. But no, in terms of like what he can do in training and what he presumably at some point you've just won an Olympic medal, you're going for a World Championships, you've got the Super League coming up, and I don't know, for someone who comes across so laid back, his drive must also be as enormous as his ability to talk after a race or whatever. But yeah, I'm just interested as to how that manifests itself on a kind of day-to-day basis on the training ground and so on as well.
Yeah, well, he doesn't. I mean, something I encourage him, but he doesn't put limits on stuff. Always, willing to give everything a go, and not afraid, to have a crack at a really hard session or, line up against anyone in the world. He's not scared to have a go. And whereas a lot of people would be a little bit scared of failing, but that's not even in his conscience. It's just, just I'm going to have a crack at this, and if it doesn't work out, then okay, maybe next time. That's probably the mentality he takes into races, and into training, and that's something I encourage as well. Sam Tanner is exactly the same mentality around his racing and training. So yeah, they complement each other really well.
And as part of the beauty of triathlon, I suppose, is the physiological differences between that. There is no off the peg athlete, right? So your background is in sports science as well. Like, how much, I've interviewed Harold Fighton, I've interviewed Ian O'Brien, and both coming from quite different opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the science that they bring into it. What is it that you're measuring in Hayden?
Yeah, interesting, because I mean, even though I do have a sports science degree, I don't think of myself as a coach who coaches with a lot of science. So I tend to think of myself, and it might be a bit stupid to say, but more of an artist than a scientist. And I think it's a little bit different from a lot of coaches out there, and I tend to want to hear how they're going, how the training went, how the session felt, rather than looking at the numbers. Because I think a lot of times, you can have that conversation and they will tell you how something has gone, and then you can verify it with the numbers. But if you just read the numbers alone, it doesn't always tell you the full picture. So I think I take that approach more often than not. And we don't use any metrics for their running. It's all just based on on pace or time and distance. Like, we know that we don't use heart rates or any power pods or anything like that. So a little bit old school in that capacity probably, but it tends to be working. So we won't meddle with it. I think there's always a time and a place for digging into some data after a session, but it's not every session needs to be like that. So yeah, time and a place, I think.
When you see your Blumenfelds and so on, and going in the laboratory and testing everything to the max and so on, like where do you stand on that as far as like the future of the sport goes? Is Alex Yee and Hayden's performances kind of proof that you don't have to go down that route and you can rely on natural talent as well, and so on? Or what's your perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. So obviously the Norwegian approach is to I was going to say something I probably shouldn't say on a podcast, but it's to use a lot of science. But I don't necessarily think that's the only way to do it. So and it has been done for a long time where people haven't used that degree of science. I know it's all on trend at the moment, and a lot of people are trying to find ways to mimic what they're up to. But I don't think it's 100% necessary.
So Hayden went into, or started 2020 having had, I guess, like a couple of his breakthrough races almost to that point had been a couple of brilliant mixed relays. But to go from there into lockdown and then come out and get your 5th place in Leeds and so on, what particularly when on the surface lockdown looked so difficult for athletes from Oceania, not being able to kind of get out there and use those opportunities, those few opportunities that there were to race. So were you able to take him aside and use it as a positive?
Yeah, so one of the big things is that we were locked down in New Zealand. We were basically locked in the country for pretty much all of 2020, and it wasn't until 2021 when he was able to get out and go and race, and that was that race in Leeds. But I think what it did do over that time in 2020 is it allowed us to just reset and just create a massive base. So he was just training week in and week out, big mileage, just doing the things that he needed to do to be as strong and as robust as possible. After the Tokyo test event in 2019, we knew he can get to the front of the race. We can be there, we can be competitive, but we just need to be able to finish those races off. So it was, get on the track here in New Zealand, learn to be a bit more tactical, be astute in the racing, learn your craft, and try and deliver a performance at the end of that race that can win a medal at least.
But that's not easy to do on a track as well, right?
No, it's not. And we had all of New Zealand's top runners back in New Zealand, so it was a really good environment for him to be able to get into and learn some racecraft. And his good friend and training partner here is Sam Tanner, who's just ran 3:31 1500. So anytime you can better him over a track race at any distance, you're doing pretty well. So so those two work really well together and complement each other. So that period was awesome in that respect. It was really difficult not being able to race pre-Tokyo. We only got permission to leave the country to go to Leeds very late in the piece. So it was only about a month before Leeds that we were given the green light to be able to travel. So it was a kind of bit of a rush job to try and get ready for Leeds. And then it was get there and then try and see what kind of form you're in, how hard can you make it, how hard can you push on the bike, how hard can you go out on the run and still survive, and what does the base fitness look like. And it looked pretty good, like it wasn't the smartest way to race, but it certainly taught us a few things about his level of fitness and the performance on that day. So and then we spent the next whatever it was, 6 weeks or 5 weeks getting ready for Tokyo and just fine-tuning what we needed to deliver on the day. So
And if Leeds, what was the plan B if you hadn't had permission to go there? I mean, it would have just been stay in New Zealand and then direct to Tokyo, and just not having had that experience alongside the best to base the next block off.
Yeah, we had permission to go to Australia, so the rest of the New Zealand team went to Australia in that period, and they were there and they did some Oceania Cup racing, which was a pretty good level, but it's still not World Series level. So that would have been Plan B, to go there. And a lot of the reason it was good to go there for them is to get out of the New Zealand winter. And Australia's always a little bit warmer than here, so winter here is pretty rough. It's kind of 5 degrees and raining right now. So.
I'm from the west of England, so I can feel that.
A summer's day for you.
Yeah, exactly. And was Sam also in Tokyo?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And was that his first Olympics?
Yes.
So your two first Olympians, and obviously under normal circumstances, you would have been there in a heartbeat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'd all booked to go in 2020, but obviously that all got canned, and then 2021 we weren't able to leave the country or weren't able to get into Japan as a spectator or anyone not associated with the Olympic Committee. So pretty hard to sit here in New Zealand and watch it all unfold on the TV and not be part of it. But it was one of those things that we couldn't avoid.
What was your demeanor during the race? Like, you're kind of, are you stood up for the majority of it, screaming at the telly? Are you?
No, I'm normally pretty calm, but I was
Yeah.
probably more anxious of that race because I knew what kind of form he had, and I knew how much it meant. So it was one of those things where, I just wanted to sit quietly in my lounge. I think my brother-in-law and my wife were the only ones here, so we just sat and watched together, and just hope that it all came together.
Could you see Hayden there when the interview came on and so on? Like, was there like a long wait after before you could kind of effectively get what you would normally get after a race, which is a bit of feedback? And obviously it's not direct to you, but still, just to know where he is after that race must have been foremost on your mind as well, really.
Yeah, it was. And the broadcaster, I think, was just the normal, like the international broadcaster everyone got. But as soon as the race was finished, they cut to the New Zealand media who were in the mix zone, and Hayden had stopped there for an interview. So, and actually, I think I was on the interview because I was talking to him on the phone as they were doing him broadcasting that live. So, lucky I didn't do anything inappropriate. But it was a pretty cool moment, obviously everyone's seen the interview, and he's pretty emotional, and it was a special time. And when you think back to 2016 when he was kind of wanting to go to the Olympics and that was kind of his goal, and then to walk away 4 years later with a medal was pretty cool.
It's amazing to see an athlete like that grab every opportunity that comes his way and look like he's just loving every minute of it as well. And what he and Alex Yee and what they've all brought to the racing over the last season, like the youngsters coming through, like a Matt Hauser or Vasco Velasquez even, has really kind of shaken things up a bit, hasn't it? And to the huge credit of the sport over certainly like since Tokyo, perhaps tail end of last season, those lineups were missing some of the big stars from the Olympics, but this season has been absolutely phenomenal.
It has, yeah. It's thrown up some really interesting ones. I think there's a natural changing of the guard and progression of young athletes coming through and older athletes who, were once dominating, not dominating anymore. So, it'll happen to Hayden and Alex, give it 4 or 5 years, the same thing will happen to them, and new athletes will roll through and take over that mantle. So, they've got to enjoy the moment in the sun and make every opportunity count, and take advantage of it all. So, there's some amazing talent coming through. I've been watching young Jamie Riddle from South Africa, who's kind of burst onto the scene in the last 6 months, and he's he's one to watch too in the future. He's a talented young man.
I think that sort of fearless riding and perhaps having that many come through out of lockdown and then having those race opportunities after the Olympics to get on those WTCS start lines has really like accelerated a big bunch of athletes' progression through, right? And whereas perhaps everyone was maybe waiting for Vincent Luis to come back and produce what we all knew he could do, he's not had the time to or the races to be able to do that because there are people impacting the races and several of them. It's not just like one here or there, or there's several of them that are keen to sort of take the race by the scruff of the neck and really mix things up.
Yeah, and I think if you go back even further to Alistair, and he was a dominant figure in the group, and he drove the breakaway, and he'd be barking at people and taking control of the race. Whereas I don't think there is that personality in the field at the moment, and so everyone's just a gunslinger and having a go, and they're not afraid to go to the front and dial it up, or to have an attack, or go together in a breakaway. It's just just all go, and it's awesome to watch. It makes it really fascinating because you just never know kind of quite what's going to happen.
Jamie was on here a couple of weeks ago, and he said Alistair was very much the sort of the inspiration behind. There may not be any Alistair style gunslingers in there at the moment, but they're all very much influenced by that, what he was doing, right? And that has kind of fueled the way they cycle. And Hayden very much influencing that in a very short period of time as well, right? I mean, his bike skills are up there with the very best, and some might say he takes the odd risk where, because of that ability, he's doing things that a large pack maybe isn't used to, and that can cause its own problems in some senses as well. I mean, by his own admission, what happened in Leeds was hugely unfortunate, but he's racing hard and fast and taking lines that perhaps other people can't.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think his bike skills are amazing, and I think that was a really unfortunate incident, and it sucked to see Johnny go down, and Alex and our other Kiwi Dylan McCulloch was involved as well. So it was horrible for them to go down, and then for Johnny to be hurt like he was. Would have been great to see him at the Com Games. But it is bike racing. Those kind of crashes happen every day in a large peloton, in the pro UCI circuit. So I guess people's level of riding needs to be at the right level, so that they're not getting mixed up if they if they're not in the right place at the right time or not paying attention. So
the mental toughness, again, that something like that will add to his racing. I'm not saying it was a good thing in any way, but to have emerged from it unscarred, so to speak, must have been very gratifying for you as well. And presumably for him to look back on and be like, right, that's compartmentalized, and to come out of something like that feeling like you've handled it well, when it was a very heated race with two of the biggest names. It was in Britain, and there was I guess a lot of opportunity for wheels to have come off or to have escalated in some sense. Would you agree?
Yeah, and he handled it well. Certainly immediately post race, and then after that as well. I think it did. It did affect him. He was genuinely upset. After the fact that those guys had went down and got hurt, and I don't know. I've never seen the footage of what actually happened, so I can't even comment on did occur. So yeah, but I think it's he'll take that into his future racing, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. Hopefully no one else crashes, but I'm sure they will. That's what happens in bike races.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think he was obviously upset, but it came across as genuine, and it's not every athlete that would have perhaps held himself up quite as well as he did after that, and I think that's all credit to him.
Yeah, very mature way to handle it.
And another race in which the talking points in both the men's and women's were numerous, and you had Vincent, going into the barrier, that is something that nobody ever would really thought was a Vincent thing to do, right? And I wondered if that was another, just those little things that could be the product of the kind of pressure that he feels under by your Haydens, your Alex Yees and Jamie Riddles and so on. That, I don't know if you just had a sort of take on that. It just seemed like such an un-Vincent thing to do that, obviously kind of enhanced what was a pretty spectacular moment anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really, really bizarre thing to happen. And I did look at it at the time and think, even the breakaway itself with him and Leo, and I looked and I thought, these guys, it's a very calculated move, and they're definitely trying to distance themselves from those guys who have outrun them in the last few races, and working hard together on the front, and then to make that error probably just indicated the pressure that they were under to deliver what they wanted to on that day. Didn't quite come off how they wanted it, but that was a very strange situation. I don't know if there was any chatter between those two before they got to that dismount line, but it certainly didn't be communicated very well.
How, for another major games, the Com Games build up, how was your approach to it? Was it seen as, obviously the world title, the Super League, it was Com Games up there with them in terms of kind of goals for the season and what you wanted to get out of it?
Yeah, for New Zealand, it's a pretty big deal, much like it was in the UK for the general public. Hayden could have won the Commonwealth Games and won the World Series, and they wouldn't know what the World Series was for the most part. But in terms of our funding streams for the program, the Com Games is important as well. So it does hold a pretty high place for us in importance for the year. So it was definitely one that we were targeting and focused on getting a really good result there. So, which, I don't know if we're going to go into the incident, but it was definitely a satisfying race. We were, happy with the outcome despite the penalty.
Yeah. It was an unusual position for him to find himself in, and presumably one that wasn't as planned for. I don't know. If you're used to being the chaser and suddenly you're the chased, that's got to throw your race tactics quite upside down, does it?
Yeah, and funnily enough, we ran through 3 or 4 race scenarios prior to the race, and just a bit of planning and discussion, and not one of those scenarios was him being in a break. Or not out of the water anyway. Yeah. So it was really bizarre, and I was actually standing kind of just up from the swim pontoon, and the first few athletes came out of the water and ran up, and I was kind of looking back. I was like, I always hate it when someone goes, he's already gone. I'm like, oh yeah. I didn't anticipate that. I'm sure he didn't expect to be there either. But yeah, it was a fantastic swim. But it does show the work that he's done, and he is actually a really capable swimmer. When he gets the right environment, and he got a really good start and just got himself on good feet, and was able to hold on to Jamie and Taylor, and away they went.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you have been living under a rock, then the incident is obviously that you've mentioned was the helmet, unclipping before racking the bike, and it's been studied tirelessly, indeed in the immediate aftermath of the race as well. But in a sport where those fine margins are so important, then and the transition is critical, and ever more so, I guess.
Yeah, difficult one to talk about. We're still in appeal process through World Triathlon over that incident, so I probably won't go into it too much. But personally, when I watch the footage, and I've watched it, I don't know, dozens of times in real time and in slow motion from a couple of different angles. My take is that it was a brilliantly timed transition, and it was a textbook example of how to rack a bike and take a helmet off almost simultaneously. And I think, and again, my personal I'll preface it. My personal feeling is that the rule is a safety rule, and there's no safety breach at all in that instance. So, and in real time, it'd be, it's a challenging call, that's for sure.
Again, his reaction afterwards was the mark of the man as well, right? He must have known that it was at best incredibly close. So to sort of almost accept it, I wonder if there was a certain frustration in. There would have perhaps been other athletes that would have been so furious and just kicked on and gone, right, stuff it, I'm going to win this race, and and then whatever, we'll deal with the situation after. His sportsmanship default was as impressive as I wonder if it was slightly frustrating for the team that then are going through this process.
Yeah, he wouldn't have known, because I shouted to him just before the end of the first lap that he'd had a penalty, but he wouldn't have known what the penalty was for. So he would have kind of gone into that second lap having no inkling of why, he'd been given a penalty. And because in the board it just said a violation, so it's just no, he was number one, I think, might have been 1V, so it's just a violation. So he had no idea what the penalty was all about. So he just had to change his game plan, and he probably knew at that point when I told him that Alex was going to win the race, because he had to serve a 10-second penalty. So it definitely had a massive impact on the outcome. And I certainly on a personal level was really disappointed that we didn't get to see the showdown that we were it was going to be delivered up for us in that last lap of the run. So yeah, but maybe next time that race.
Almost certainly. I mean, yeah, those two in action at the moment have certainly been bringing the entertainment, and the spotlight on Hayden has been incredibly strong. How those specific incidents, whether it was the crash in Leeds or the way he responded to the Com Games penalty, again, have shown the maturity of the fella. He's now certainly among the favourites to be world champion this year. He's got the Super League coming up. And how have you seen him responding to what is like a very sudden burst into the absolute spotlight, and being, there's nowhere to hide when you're at the pointy end of those races, when you're the one dictating, when you're the one taking the gold, and then the subject of the chatter and the dissection of the races and so on. Is that something that he's reveled in, do you think?
Look, I don't know that it actually bothers him at all. Like, I think he kind of gets on with the post-race kind of interviews and any kind of requests for media and stuff, and just gets on with it, and then puts it behind him and start focusing on what the real objectives of the season are. I don't think he spends too much time dwelling on that kind of stuff.
And what are the goals for the rest of the season? How's it panning out for him?
Oh, he wants to win everything is what he wants to do.
He's got that kind of right, if it's put in front of me, I'm doing it kind of vibe, is he?
Yeah. He'll race you to the kitchen. He he's obviously got Collins Cup this weekend. So that'll be a really interesting kind of challenge for him, something completely different. And it'll be. I really have no idea how he's going to go. It'll probably depend on who he's matched up against, I think, as to what kind of performance he'll be able to deliver there. And then after that, Super League, and then on the World Series final. So yeah, it'll be, that'll be the end of the season. Maybe a half Ironman towards the end of the year. We'll have to negotiate that and see which one, if he does one, which one it is. But yeah, the grand final in Abu Dhabi is definitely the focus, and we're still toying with the idea of going to Bermuda, but not 100% firm on that yet.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see, where the challenge comes from. I'm anticipating Alex will go to Cagliari and to Bermuda to draw level 1 points, and then it'll be a showdown in Abu Dhabi. So yeah.
Your sort of end of season debrief and look back and so on after last year, the season of seasons. But then is that a period that you always quite look forward to as well with your athlete? Obviously, somewhat dependent on how the season has gone, how much you look forward to it. But these kind of cycles that you inevitably go through, that's got to be one of the best parts of being a coach, hasn't it? Like looking back at what you've done, what you've implemented, and what you want to do next, and getting the buy-in from the athlete to go on that journey with you.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we obviously do debriefs after every race where we sit down and talk about kind of how it went and what went right and wrong, and what how can we change things that went wrong and see if we can get them right next time. So, and again, at the end of the season, we'll do the same thing and just try and get a good understanding of what we can what we can impact for the following year or the whole next cycle going through to Paris. So which is always an interesting challenge. Sometimes you have such a good season and you're like, well, what is there to fix? But there's always something to fix, because there's always a new gunslinger coming to town with some new weapons. So we need to make sure that we're keeping on top of those guys as well, and knowing what's coming.
Absolutely. Well, we all look forward to how that is going to play out, and I know you're a busy man, so just want to say thanks ever so much. It's been a great chat and run through of very interesting times in triathlon, no doubt. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.